brilliant people. So today I've got 10 reasons for you, but these 10 reasons are actually about why your ego may be the death of your intuition. Now, I'm not saying that ego is all bad. Actually, in Practology, one of the things that we work to do is to get our ego into alignment with our spirit or our core values, because then it doesn't kill our intuition. But when there is a conflict between our spirit and our ego, then yeah, our ego can definitely kill our intuition, because it's taking us away. Our ego can take us away from who we really are. So when we can realign our ego so that our, all of that really strong egoic energy is serving our integrity, then ego is brilliant. But when it's not doing that, when it's in conflict with our integrity, with our core values, yeah, it'll take us off track and it can kill our intuition. So these are the 10 reasons why, or why it does kill our intuition. So the first reason is that our ego needs to be right. I'm sure you've all met people like that. Because of the way that most of us are conditioned, most of us are conditioned with this right-wrong thinking. And so, yeah, when our ego is really trying to take over, it needs to be right. And that includes obviously not listening to people who have different opinions, including your own intuition. So because of the ego's need to be right, it can make it harder for us to hear our intuition. Brings us to the second thing, which is that our ego can then therefore limit our ability to be aware of things, that actually might make us wrong, or might make the ego wrong, not us wrong, because your intuition's on track. But the ego does not want to know about anything that might make it wrong. And so, yeah, when there are other things, other realities, other factors that can, that your intuition might be working to alert you to, your ego just, no, I don't want to hear it. So, yeah. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that your ego listens to fear. There's a very good reason for that. Your ego has really developed to help you survive. When we work on it so that it comes into alignment with who you really are, then your ego is really about striving to thrive instead of struggling to survive. But for most of us, when the ego is still in conflict with our integrity, with our spirit, yeah, the ego's listening to fear, because it's watching out for any threats that might, have an impact on our survival. And the problem is that intuition is all about helping us create a more expansive, more fulfilled life for ourselves, and that's got nothing to do with fear. So, yeah, the fact that our ego listens to fear is one of the reasons why it can really kill our intuition. And the fourth reason is that our ego, partly because it's locked into fear, but also because it has it has one particular vision of who we are. That's what our ego is. We think we tend to over-identify with our ego when it's in conflict with our integrity. That's why it's in conflict. And so any sensations or, thoughts, inputs that can help us be more in alignment with our integrity and not have the ego be so much in control, the ego will tend to reject them, because, of course, the ego thinks it needs to be in control in order for us to survive. So, yeah. And the fifth reason why ego can be the death of intuition is that Again, partly because our ego wants to be right, it makes it really hard to listen to other people's intuition, because other people's intuition, okay, they're looking at things through different lenses. Their intuition is about supporting them to be who they really are. So it may not always have anything to do with us, but sometimes other people's intuition can be really, really helpful, particularly if we are working on a co-creation or something. And if we're coming from our ego, an ego that's in conflict with our spirit, our ego doesn't want to know about other people's intuition, because again, that can introduce things into the mix that might make the ego wrong. So the sixth reason is that the ego, because it has a particular viewpoint, because it wants to be right, it has certain biases. So it makes it very easy to confuse our imagination and our intuition. In other words, because we have an ego bias towards a certain viewpoint, certain things happening, things that we're attached to, our ego can actually really kill our intuition, because our ego is so attached to certain things happening. It tries to convince us that our imaginings of that happening is actually genuine intuition, and it's not. It's just us projecting the things that we want to have happen. Which leads us to what number I'm up to? 7. The seventh reason why your ego can kill your intuition is that because you do have these attachments, because of ego attachments, that can make it really harder for you to just be able to observe what is in this more detached way. And really, of course, that is a big part of what your intuition is doing for you. It's helping you be aware of what is. But because you have these attachments, it's unconsciously you're going to be blocking certain awarenesses out. Which is connected to number 8, which is that when we're in our ego, things are always more emotional. If you think back to times when you were, when your intuition was working really, really well, or if you talk to somebody whose intuition is really strong, a lot of the times, if when your intuition is at its strongest, it's kind of like you just know. It's like, on an overcast day, like you might look out the window and it's all grey and grizzly, but you still know the sky is blue, and it's not an emotional thing. It's just a thing that is. It's the same thing with your intuition. When your intuition is at its strongest, you just know how things are, or what is going to happen. And there's not really a lot of emotion attached to it. It's just, that's just how it is. But of course, the ego, because it does get really attached to stuff and it's operating from fear, it can get really emotional. And that emotion itself, of course, can then add to the fogginess of our observations. So, 9, number 9. Again, because our ego does so love to be right, it makes it harder to learn, because our ego doesn't want to acknowledge when we were wrong, or when we allowed our ego to sort of confuse our imaginings and our intuition. So we thought our intuition was wrong. We don't want to acknowledge that. And so that makes it harder for us to then learn how to fine-tune our skills, our intuitive skills. And so I suppose that's more like future killing our intuition, or killing the growth of our intuition rather than the intuition itself. But yeah, it makes it harder for us to learn how to how to work with our intuition in a more effective way, because in order to do better, we need to be able to acknowledge perhaps what didn't work as well, and the ego doesn't like to do that. And the 10th reason why our ego is the killer of our intuition, when our ego is in conflict with our integrity, is because it likes to project. Again, this comes from the attachments. The ego is really attached to certain things happening or a certain viewpoint. And so this isn't so much an imagining, it's more like we're projecting really heavily. Well, no, this is going to happen. And it's not really our intuition talking. It's our attachments talking. It's like we are so attached to this outcome, we've managed to convince ourselves that that is what's going to happen, and then we're trying to tell ourselves that that projection is actually our intuition talking to us. And it's not. It's just our attachments being hard to let go of. Anyway, so if you have any of those things going on, it just means that maybe you need to work on getting your ego into alignment with who you really are, rather than having it being in conflict with who you really are. Because, as I said, when your ego's in conflict with who you really are, it's going to really be getting in the way of your intuition. And you don't want it to be doing that, because that's, that doesn't help you live intuitively. And of course, it also gets in the way of you remembering that you're brilliant.